Just past the first 3 months of the year, and I sure can't say it hasn't been uneventful. What's up guys, welcome back. It's been a while since the last video. I hope everybody has been doing great. We've been quite busy in the background as usual, and are back with some cool updates in regards to the development of this project. But first off, you might have been wondering where have we been? Well, as some of you might know, especially if you've been following our socials, links down in the description by the way, we attended the Utrecht MotorBeurs this year from Thursday, February 19th all the way up till Sunday, February 22nd. During the convention, we took the opportunity to meet some of you wonderful people, present the user interaction prototype, and really get a feel of what a community was missing with the current alternatives on the market. And safe to say, it's been quite a success as we spoke to over 480 different people, each providing essential feedback, which resulted in some interesting trends. But before we get into it, me and the team would like to thank everybody who visited our stand in helping us to create an amazing product for the community. I really believe that together we can create something great for all motorcyclists to enjoy. Now with that said, let's get into the user interaction prototypes. So to give you guys some context first, we spent the majority of January and a fair bit of December up until the convention developing, iterating and actually 3D printing the user interaction prototype that we would be exhibiting during the motorcycle convention. The idea was to have a chat with everybody passing by, let them interact with the prototypes, ask about navigation systems they use, and overall just get a good vision about what people liked and disliked about the current systems they use and our prototype. For this, we set up 3 prototypes, each different in the way you can interact with the system. The first prototype allows users to interact using the ring dial in combination with a touchscreen, as this prototype was the one that contained the Pixel Watch. Additionally, this prototype also functioned to show everybody the Nav-e app in combination with the Nav-e unit, as we had developed the app to the point you will be able to send your routes to the device. The second prototype adopted the ring dial similar to the first prototype, but we did away with the touchscreen, instead opting for physical buttons along the rim that you guys would be able to use to interact with the system when not using the Nav-e app. And lastly, we also had a third prototype that only used physical buttons to interact with the system when not using the Nav-e app. But I'll come right out the gate and say that it barely got any attention, which admittedly was expected, but we intended it as to provide people a full picture before selecting a preference. And choosing you guys sure did, as we collected everybody's preferences and feedback, painstakingly inserted into a spreadsheet, did some statistical magic and ended up with some interesting trends. I've grouped these trends into the following categories, each representing an important aspect of the device, namely the user experience, the hardware, and the software and ecosystem. But first off, the user experience, which can be summed up in 3 words: user-friendliness, intuitivity, readability, and with sane default or plug and play as more of a subcategory. These topics represent over 62% of the feedback and represents the core of what you guys expected in the device, which could be summarized as the device should require minimum effort to learn and operate and convey the most important information clearly. As one of the biggest complaints we kept hearing, especially in regards to certain models of Garmin and TomTom, were such things as having cluttered settings, making it hard to find things, having an outdated, unintuitive UI, requiring manual updates, and even on some models having bad visibility in the sun. Which segues nicely into the topic of readability, as out of all the people we spoke to, it was the 3rd most mentioned topic. In essence, the topic came up due to the compact size we proposed, which would be around 7 cm for the whole unit, with a screen size of about 6 cm, which seemed to be the sweet spot in terms of compact design, as over 93% of visitors agreed. However, the biggest concern with the size was that it does influence readability, especially with a demographic that might experience reduced visibility due to age or medical reasons. Luckily, this is an issue that can be mitigated for a big part by prioritizing the user experience. We've heard a lot of great ideas from you guys, from providing an additional screen with a simplified interface to being able to modify the map layers and provide something like a high contrast layer. Either way, having heard these frustrations and concerns, going forward, we now know what to avoid and what to include in regards to the user experience. Now when it comes to hardware, we asked ourselves before the convention what the number 1 thing would be that people would bring up. And honestly, we did not guess the mount system. Over a third of everybody we spoke to brought it up in some way, which honestly caught us a little off guard, as we were guessing it would most likely be a discussion between physical buttons and a touchscreen. But it does make sense, as one of the key requirements people stated was its sturdiness. I mean, I get it, as a motorcyclist, I would want something that wobbles, vibrates loose after a few hundred kilometers on the rough road, or damages the electronics over time, so you guys can be sure we'll be taking that into account when developing the mount. Beyond sturdiness, people want universal compatibility, different handlebar diameters, sport bike bolt mounts, and yeah, a few of you BMW riders out there specifically asked about BMW compatible mounts. So we made sure to note that all down. This universal compatibility also extends to the ability to charge the Nav-e unit from the mount as people requested this feature for both 12-volt connectors for the motor or USB. Alongside this, people also requested for a quick release mechanism for when you park up and don't want to leave it or charge it on the bike. Coming back to the discussion between physical keyboards and touchscreens, the results were absolutely clear, as everybody with the exception of 2 people stated to prefer physical buttons as opposed to touchscreens, with the biggest reason being glove use, as touchscreens don't tend to work well with them, especially in the winter. Alongside the ability that physical buttons bring to better interact with the system whilst being able to keep the eyes on the road. But hardware is only half the story, as there was plenty of feedback in regards to the software and the ecosystem itself. One of the most prominent frustrations we kept hearing were about other manufacturers on the market that attempt to lock users in within their own ecosystems. They either made interoperability with other systems difficult or only allowed apps from within their ecosystem. And I want to state immediately that this is the opposite of what we want our navigation solution to be. As stated in previous videos, we want to work with an open ecosystem for our solution, as we believe firmly these systems and tools should empower the driver in the journey instead of limiting them. This means that we'll build our tools in such a way that, where possible, you're free to use whatever works best for you. Whether you want to plan your routes with our own app or use something different like Google's My Map, our navigation systems should slot right into your existing workflow, not replace it. And to that extent, that philosophy extends beyond just route planning tools, as many of the visitors made it very clear that there are certain services they relied on every single ride. Things such as speed camera warnings, live traffic data, music app control, and for those of you running a helmet HUD, even coupling that into the system. So you can be sure that building out this integration layer and the necessary APIs is firmly on the roadmap. Another surprising, often mentioned point of frustration was in terms of route integrity, as many have mentioned that especially on Garmin systems, sometimes slightly different routes are calculated from an imported GPX, leading to a lot of people telling us of how they were touring with a friend on the same route, until one of them using a different GPS system accidentally took a wrong turn. This is something we noted down and actually already implemented in the Nav-e app, but we'll go over that later in the video. Lastly, we also saw some interest for 2 additional features worth mentioning. A number of people asked about route generation, mentioning a Kalimoto style scenic routing with more motorcycle specific parameters, such as elevation or how twisty you would like your roads to be. This is definitely something we see as a great feature that we intend to implement further down the line. And there was a somewhat unexpected one, namely Android Auto and CarPlay support. This was specially requested by people with newer motorcycles that were more interested in the Nav-e app. And this too is something we consider implementing further down the line. And with that, we covered the overall feedback you guys provided. Of course, we haven't exactly been sitting still in the meantime and have plenty of development updates to get into. So to start, we decided to start with offline navigation, as it forms the foundation of the entire app and gives us the ability to properly test the core features moving forward. We do have already implemented the basics of A to B navigation, and we're currently in the process of refining it further to make sure it feels solid and reliable. Another big one that we hinted at early in the video was route importing, specifically making sure that when you import a route, the integrity of the route stays preserved as much as possible. Now, to understand why this is such a pain point, you need to know that GPX files can contain 2 types of data: routes and tracks. Routes are basically a series of waypoints that the device uses to calculate navigation, while you can see tracks more as a breadcrumb trail of GPS coordinates. The problem is that when certain devices receive a route, they run those points through their own internal routing engine, which might use different map data, different road preferences, or different algorithms, resulting in some cases in situations where you and your buddy plan the exact same route, but because your devices interpreted the route differently, one of you takes a wrong turn, which is exactly the kind of frustration we want to eliminate, which is why the core functionality of GPX importing is now working and changes as little as necessary when importing the route. From here on, we'll be improving the overall user friendliness of this feature, with for example the ability to navigate to the start point of your imported route. In addition, we also managed to add the ability to record and save your route sessions, so you'll be able to record any cool routes you discovered along the way and write them again on a future date. Lastly, we're also experimenting with the UI at the moment, trying out different approaches to make sure everything feels intuitive and readable, which, as you guys made very clear, is an essential component. So for those of you that are testing the app or planning to test it, we would love to hear your feedback on how the interface feels. Let us know what works, what doesn't, and what you think could be improved. And with that, we've come to the end of the update. It's been a pretty packed few months between all the conventions, all the feedback you guys provided, and the development progress we've made, and we're really excited about the direction things are heading. But as always, we can't do it without you guys. So if you want to get hands-on with the app yourself, The link of the repository is down in the description below. Download it, take it for a spin, and let us know what you think. Whether it's something that feels off, something you love to see added, or even something you think we nailed, all of it helps us to make a better experience for the whole community. So drop your thoughts down in the comments below as we read all of them. And of course, if you haven't yet, give us a follow on our socials to stay up to date with everything. Now to close off, wherever in the world you might be, thank you for watching.